Hello, my name is David Lashinger. Thank you for viewing this video about our week-long adventure down the Amazon River. I'm just kidding. I wish I could present something that exciting. This is more mundane, I'm afraid. It's about refinishing your mailbox at Robson Ranch. My wife and I have lived at Robson since December of 2003. Yes, ours was one of the first 200 homes built there. But when we lived there about 12 years, our mailbox started to rust, mainly up on the top. I decided I better make my mailbox look better before the ALC told me I had to do something about it. Now, before I go any further, let me give you a disclaimer. I'm not representing the Robson Ranch Homeowners Association or the Architectural Landscape Committee in what I present in this video. The information and the opinions, if there are any, are my own and not those of the HOA. There, now that we got that legal stuff out of the way, let's move on. When our mailbox needed refinishing, I knew I couldn't just paint it black, like would be the case if we lived anywhere else. That's because the ALC guidelines require that the mailboxes have the green faux paint finish. They don't care if the mailbox is loose and about to fall off the post, but the USPS carrier might appreciate having it tightened down. I did some research and got the exact formula for the green paint from the company that at that time was the only one installing new ones at Robson Ranch. I went to Home Depot and got a quart of the paint blended to the specifications. When I was done, I had almost a full quart of green paint left over. We didn't have anything else that needed painting green, so I began to offer to paint mailboxes for other Robson residents. Between August 2015 and April 2020, I repainted and refurbished over 265 mailboxes. After painting that many mailboxes, I've decided to retire from the task, but I've learned quite a few tricks and tips that I wanted to pass along to other Robson residents who will eventually have the same problem. When mailboxes are 10 to 15 years old, they're going to need a facelift. The homeowner has two options. You can either buy a new one or refurbish the one that you have. I'll go into both of those options in more detail in this video. If you decide to refurbish the one you have, I will loan you the green faux paint and provide some other items that you're going to need at a reasonable price. There are two sizes of mailboxes used at Robson Ranch, but 95% of them are the standard M7 size. Most mailboxes are mounted in pairs on the crossbar, with the post set near the property line for the two houses. I won't be talking about the mounting for the single mailbox on the pole or the larger mailbox, but the same painting techniques will apply to all mailboxes. There are three components I will talk about. All of them must have the green faux paint per the ALC guidelines. There's the post or pole, which is aluminum cast. The crossbar, that's also aluminum cast, and the mailbox is formed steel. Now here are some of the types of problems I've observed. Well, rust on the top of the mailbox is the most common, which is accelerated by bird droppings, the Texas weather, and age. Unfortunately, the ALC will not allow us to put any spikes or other device on top of the mailbox to deter the birds from perching on it. The string grass trimmers beat up the lower part of the pole. The wood used to mount the mailbox to the post gets worn out, rots, splits, and sometimes gets infested with insects. Some or all of the components get damaged by vehicles, cars, golf carts, and RVs that back into them. Most of the time the crossbars take the worst of the hit and they crack or break. A new one runs about $40 plus shipping, or you can pick it up in Southlake at Identitech and save the shipping charge. I've also observed dents and dings from hail on mailboxes, but this condition will not result in a violation notice from the ALC. So let's go over the preparations. If there's vegetation close to the mailbox, trim it back about 12 inches so you can maneuver the paintbrush. If the vegetation cannot be cut back that far, then it would be best to remove the mailbox and paint it in your garage or somewhere else. You want to have a look at the weather forecast. Make sure the favorable conditions are ahead. The temperature should be above 50 degrees when applying the oil-based paints. If you use a spray primer, it's best to wait for a calm day. Those are kind of rare out here at Robson Ranch. And avoid rain and having the sprinkler system come on while the paint is drying. Now let's have a look at the ALC guidelines. First of all, I have displayed here the current guidelines, but you'll want to check the HOA website to make sure you have the most up-to-date version. Robson Development installs the post, the crossbar, and the mailboxes at the time of house construction. The homeowners are responsible for maintaining these. If your mailbox is rusted or has deteriorated, as I mentioned before, one of your options is to buy a new mailbox that meets the ALC guidelines. The current guidelines state that there are two suppliers for mailboxes, crossbars, and posts, Brandon Industries and Identitech. However, Brandon is no longer providing any items. Identitech in Southlake is our only source. You can pick up new parts at their store, have them shipped to you if you want to do the installation or have a handyman do it, or you can pay Identitech to install them. Have a look at the ALC requirements and note what can and can't be attached to the mailbox. Address numbers, 2 inches high or less, are allowed but not recommended on the front of the box. They are another thing you need to maintain, so maybe they aren't worth the trouble. The mail carriers don't typically notice the address on the box as the mail is pre-sorted. However, they have gotten our street, Countryside, confused with a parallel street, Murray S. Johnson, and occasionally misdelivered items with the same house number. I decided to put an address label inside our box, hoping it would help to solve that problem. The guidelines do not allow us to put other things on the mailbox except temporary holiday decorations, so the items shown in these pictures are technically not allowed. The one with the ribbon decal has a more serious problem on top, rust. The green faux paint requirement is the main reason for me to make this training video. You cannot paint the mailbox black and call it a day. You will eventually get a notice from the ALC that it must have the green faux finish. Perhaps the guidelines will be changed someday, but that is what is required at this time. Now I'll move into mounting the mailbox and what it takes to have a really secure mailbox. The components we'll be talking about are the post, the crossbar, the wood used for mounting, and the fasteners. We've already talked about the post and crossbar, so let me mention the wood. I use a weather-treated deck wood that's 14 inches long, 5.5 inches wide, and about an inch thick. I do not recommend untreated wood, plywood, and certainly not particle board, as they will not last very long in the weather. I have seen metal and plastic mounting products for sale in stores and online, but I have not used them mainly because they are designed for mounting a mailbox directly to some kind of post rather than a crossbar. For fasteners and tools, you'll need 2 or 3 wood screws, number 12s that are 1 inch long, 4 to 8 lath screws, number 8s that are 1 5/8 inches long, a 3/16 wood drill bit, a cordless drill, and also a Phillips screwdriving head. I will sell you the screws and the piece of deck wood for $5. Now I'll go over the process steps. Check to see if the crossbar is wobbly on the post. If it moves, then tighten the 3 nuts using an Allen wrench. Next, examine the wood under the mailbox. If it's split or has rotted, it would be wise to replace it. If it looks like it's still good, then you can probably use it again to secure the mailbox. It might be wise to remove the mailbox, reseat the wood on the crossbar with new holes, and reattach the mailbox to get a more solid grip. Next, you'll want to remove the mailbox from the wooden mount. Usually there's a few Phillips screws that are holding it. Then you can remove the wood from the crossbar. That also usually is accomplished by backing out some Phillips screws from the underside of the crossbar unless some other fasteners have been substituted. Now you can replace the wood. Lay the new wood over the holes in the crossbar. There's usually 2 to 3 holes, and one of them may be too wide for the wood to span over all 3 holes. But mark the holes from the bottom with a pencil. Then, using a 3/16 bit, drill pilot holes most or all of the way through the wood at the pencil marks. Now, put the number 12 1-inch screw through the bottom of the holes in the crossbar and insert it into the pilot holes that you've just drilled in the wood. Fasten them tightly with the Phillips screwdriver or the electric drill with the Phillips head. Now you can remount the mailbox. Place the mailbox over the new piece of wood and slide it forward or back a little as needed to align it with the neighbor's mailbox on the crossbar. The wood is about 1/2 inch narrower than the mailbox, So there will be some lateral movement. Push the mailbox to one side so it is next to the wood before setting the screws. I prefer pushing it away from the other mailbox so I have plenty of room to maneuver my electric screwdriver. Fasten the mailbox to the wood with at least 4 Phillips lath screws. Those are the number 8 screws, 1 5/8 inches long. Put 2 on each side, one near the front and one near the back of the mailbox. These are self-tapping screws, so there's no need to drill a pilot hole. Don't over-tighten it, as it may deform the mailbox metal. Check to make sure the mailbox is sturdy and secured. It should be. Next, I'll move into making some of the basic repairs. There are 3 styles of flags that have been used, and they have different mounting configurations. The first metal type was original equipment, but I have no success in finding replacements in stores or online. A common problem with these is that a small plastic nipple breaks off, which then allows the flag to continue past the horizontal or down position and not stay in the vertical or up position. The second metal type is not original equipment, but is available in the stores. It requires drilling a new hole in the mailbox, as the pattern is different from the original one. That leaves a vulnerable hole in the mailbox for water leaks unless you cover it with some kind of tape or other sealant. The plastic flag is mainly used on the older mailboxes, and those are available at Lowe's, Home Depot, or Amazon. There are 2 styles of clasps for the door. There's a metal one, which can be adjusted with pliers to help it stay shut, or if it's too tight, you can loosen it up by also adjusting that metal piece. Then there's the plastic type. Those often break, and replacements are available from Amazon. Now it's time to go over the painting process, and let's start with the parts list. I use an oil-based primer, usually black rather than gray or white. Here are a couple of that I've used: a rust reformer and a black gloss primer. Then I use an oil-based paint, either gloss or semi-gloss. I prefer the kind you apply with a brush to get a thicker coat and not have to worry about the spray getting on the neighbor's mailbox or the crossbar. Next is the all-important green faux paint. You'll need paint brushes. I used a 2-inch wide bristle brush for the black paint and a 1-inch wide bristle brush for the green paint. I don't recommend to throw away sponge brushes. You'll need a few rags, paper towels, paint thinner, and possibly disposable gloves if you like. A few scrap pieces of cardboard about 1 foot square will be helpful to have. A cordless drill with a circular wire brush comes in handy for removing excess rust. And now what you've been waiting for, the all-important painting process. If the post needs painting at the bottom around the grass, trim the grass down as far as you can. Cut semicircles into the edges of 2 scrap pieces of cardboard and put them around the post next to the ground. This helps keep grass and dirt out of your paintbrush. Remove the flag by pulling the red plastic pin securing the metal flag or sliding the tab holding the pin on the plastic flag. If the mailbox has a plastic clip for door latches, remove those by pulling the sliding tabs. Be sure not to lose any of the small parts from the flag or the door latches. Apply painter's tape over the exposed areas that you don't want painted, such as next to the mailbox on the crossbar, and over the address numbers on the door if you have them and want to preserve them. Attach pieces of painter's tape inside the box to cover the holes where the flag was removed and, if applicable, the door clasps. Use the wire brush or sandpaper to get rid of the major rust on the surfaces. Clean the surfaces to be painted with alcohol on a rag or paper towel. Spray primer or rust reformer, especially on bare metal areas of the mailbox and the post, as needed. The primer generally dries quickly, so you can continue to the next step within 15 to 30 minutes. Using your 2-inch wide brush, apply black paint to the mailbox and, if necessary, the post. Let it dry for 24 hours. Clean your paintbrush with paint thinner and make sure the lid is tight on the paint can. The next day, after the black paint has dried, it may be necessary to re-clean the surface with alcohol and a rag or paper towel because bird waste and minerals from sprinkler water may have deposited on them overnight. Now comes the most important part, applying the green faux paint to the mailbox and, if necessary, to the post. This is also the trickiest part, applying the right amount of green, not too much and not too little. It is better to apply too little, as you can always add a bit more paint. But if you get too much green on the surface, you'll need to wipe some off with a rag, possibly dipped in paint thinner. Take the 1-inch wide brush and dip only the tip of it into about a 1/4 inch of the green paint. Wipe the excess paint on the edge of the container. Take a couple of practice strokes on a scrap of cardboard. I recommend you start on the back of the mailbox away from the street. This is sort of a practice area, so if you mess it up, it won't be as noticeable. Turn the paintbrush about 45 degrees to the mailbox surface, then begin a brush stroke at the edge and brush all the way across diagonally to the other edge. When you're done with one diagonal, make the same brush strokes on the other diagonal. This will give a crisscross or cross-hatched look. Do the same for the front door of the mailbox. To paint the sides, start at the bottom of one side of the mailbox and brush upward from the crossbar to where the curve begins. Do the same for the other side of the mailbox. Finally, you can crisscross the curved top of the mailbox. When the green paint dries, if you think there's too much green, you can reverse the process by making light strokes of black paint over the green to darken it to a point that it looks better. When you finish painting, reattach the flag and the door clasps as necessary. Remove the painter's tape, double check your work, clean the brushes with paint thinner, and tightly close the container of paint. Well, if you're able to follow this process, you should have a nice looking mailbox that will last longer than the original paint job, and perhaps most importantly, you will not get a notice from the ALC. I hope this has been helpful, and I'll see you around the ranch.